Alright you guys, in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to make this DIY face mask. The great thing about this mask is there's no elastics needed or ties. You can download your free pattern available in all sizes at rosypenapatterns.com. The link is in the description box below. To make this mask you'll need some cotton fabric. You'll also need some stretchy fabric. You can use a ponte knit, a double knit, anything that has a nice structure and stretch to it. You'll also need some interfacing for this project. Also some paper scissors to cut out your pattern, a rotary cutter and rotary cutter mat, also some sewing pins, and then some snippers to cut off your loose thread. Also some pattern weights to hold down your pattern as you're cutting. On page 2 of your PDF are instructions on how to print out your pattern. Make sure you follow those instructions and measure your testing square to make sure you have the correct size printed. Once you've chosen your size, go ahead and just take your paper scissors and cut out your pattern pieces. Now we're going to cut out our fabric using our pattern pieces. So go ahead and take pattern piece number 1 and go ahead and cut 2 pairs using your cotton fabric. I already have my fabric folded once, and then I'm going to fold it again onto itself so I can cut my 2 pairs at once. I'm also going to repeat that same process to my interfacing as well. Now my cotton fabric is very lightweight, so I'm going to interface both of my pairs. But if you have a medium to heavyweight cotton fabric, go ahead and just interface one of your pairs. This will be the lining fabric. You can snip into the double notches at the front of the mask or make a marking here. This is just going to help you make sure you have the correct pieces facing each other during the sewing process. Next, using the manufacturer directions on your interfacing, you want to just go ahead and fuse that interfacing to your main pieces. I'm going to have the wrong side of my mask facing up, and then I'm going to have the bubbly textured side of my interfacing facing the wrong side of the fabric. Then I'm just going to gently press my iron over top to fuse these pieces together. Follow your manufacturer directions on your interfacing. My fabric is very lightweight, so I'm fusing interfacing to both of my pairs. If you have a medium to heavyweight cotton fabric, just fuse your interfacing to one pair only. Once you have your pieces interfaced, go ahead and just pin one pair of your main fabric with right sides together, matching those double notches. Repeat that to your lining fabric as well. Before we go to our sewing machine, we're going to go ahead and cut out pattern piece number 2, which is your ear piece. You want to make sure you have a structured knit fabric. In this video, I'm using a neoprene or a scuba knit fabric. You can use a ponte knit or a double knit as well. You'll only need to cut one pair of this pattern piece. So I have my fabric folded with right sides together, and I'm just cutting out both layers at once. You'll also want to make sure you cut out the center circle in your pattern piece. This is going to be the opening to fit around your ear. Now that you have all of your pattern pieces cut out and your fabric pinned with right sides together, we can go ahead and go to the sewing machine. Place your fabric under your sewing machine, and you want to sew along the pinned edge with 1/4 inch seam allowance, or 6 millimeters, making sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end of your seam, and also remove those sewing pins as you go. Snip off any loose threads, and we're going to finger press the seam to one side. So just go ahead and run your finger along the seam, pressing that seam allowance to one side of your mask. Then you want to place your fabric under your sewing machine, and we're going to top stitch on the right side of the fabric, securing that seam allowance in place. So you're sewing about 1/8 inch away from that seam line. Repeat these steps to your lining fabric as well. Now you just want to gently press your fabric along the seam line with your iron. So go ahead and just place your mask over a pressing ham or your ironing table and gently press that seam allowance. Now that we've pressed those seam allowances, go ahead and just place your main pieces with right sides together, and you're going to pin along the top around the nose area, and then you're going to pin along the bottom around the chin area. You don't want to pin around the sides. Take your fabric to your sewing machine and you're going to sew along the pinned edges with 1/4 inch or 6mm seam allowance, making sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end of your seams, and also remove those sewing pins as you go. Now, using one of the side openings, you just want to turn your fabric with the right sides facing out. Determine which side of the fabric is your lining, and you want to gently roll that seam line closer to the lining so that you don't see the seam on the right side of the fabric. Go ahead and just place that under your iron and gently neaten it in place. Now that you've gently pressed that with your iron in place, we're going to top stitch along the nose area and also along the bottom as well. Again, about 1/8 inch away from that edge. Now we're going to attach our earpiece to the main fabric. So you want to grab your earpieces and you're going to place them with right sides facing along the side seams. You want to make sure you're matching the correct position. So the upper area of the earpiece is matching the upper area of the mask, and the lower area of the earpiece is matching the lower area of the mask. So go ahead and just pin that in place with right sides together. Take your mask to your sewing machine and you're going to sew along the pinned edges with 1/4 inch seam allowance, making sure to remove those pins as you go, and also backstitch at the beginning and the end of your seam. Once you've sewn both sides in place, go ahead and just neaten that seam with a serger or your desired method, and then you want to press that seam towards the center of the mask. Take your mask to your sewing machine and you just want to top stitch about 1/8 inch away from that seam line on both sides. Once you finish with that step, you're all done with your DIY face mask. I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Make sure you hit like and also the share button as well so you can share this video with your friends. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys!